The void of space erupted in a symphony of destruction. Plasma torpedoes carved crimson arcs through the inky blackness, their trails illuminating the desperate final moments of what might be the last free fleet in the known galaxy. The Nyx Imperium's obsidian dreadnoughts loomed like predatory shadows, their kilometer-long hulls bristling with weapons that could vaporize entire planetary populations. Commander Elena Rodriguez gripped the command console of the Resistance flagship Defiant, her knuckles white beneath the skin-tight neural interface gloves. Holographic displays flickered around her, each one a countdown to extinction. 63 ships remained, a pitiful remnant of the thousands that had fought over the past 3 years. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Chen worked frantically, his fingers dancing across quantum communication arrays that sparked and sputtered with each incoming transmission. Incoming swarm from Sector 9. Kai's voice cracked, a mixture of terror and exhaustion. Quantum signature confirms heavy bombardment class. We got maybe 3 minutes before. A massive explosion ripped through the port side of a Centaurian support vessel. Its hull split like paper, spilling atmosphere and fragmented bodies into the endless black. Elena didn't flinch. She'd seen too much to be shocked anymore. Reroute all remaining power to defensive shields, she commanded, her voice a low, controlled growl. And prepare the last of our quantum disruptors. If we're going down, we're taking at least a dozen of those bastards with us. The bridge crew, a motley collection of humans, silicon-based Serens, empathic Melodians, and cybernetic Krell, moved with the precision of those who knew each moment could be their last. They were more than a crew now. They were family. The last family of the free universe. Tactical displays showed the brutal mathematics of their situation. The Nyx Imperium outnumbered them 500 to 1. Their weapons were depleted. Their ships were more patch and prayer than functional technology. This wasn't just a battle. It was a funeral. A strange pulse began to ripple through the communication systems. At first, it was barely perceptible. A quantum-level vibration that most sensors would miss. But Kai's modified detection array caught it. His eyes widened. "Commander," he said, a tremor in his voice that was neither fear nor excitement. Something else. Something impossible. Elena turned, one eyebrow raised. In 3 years of warfare, she learned that impossible was just a challenge waiting to be overcome. The mysterious signal pulsed again, encrypted, complex, unlike anything in their known communication protocols. For a moment, just a moment, the endless barrage of weapons fire seemed to pause, as if the entire battlefield was holding its breath. Outside, the Nyx Imperium's fleet continued its relentless advance. Massive energy cannons charge, ready to deliver the final, crushing blow to the last resistance. Thousands of smaller attack craft swarmed like piranha, each one capable of destroying a mid-sized cruiser. Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the slightest hint of a smile. Something was coming. Something that might just change everything. "Keep that signal isolated," she told Kai, "and get me a direct link to what's left of our quantum research team on Titan." As if in response, another explosion rocked the Defiant. But this time, something felt different. This wasn't just another hit. This was something else entirely. 47 meters beneath the frozen surface of Titan, the most classified research facility in human history hummed with a quiet intensity that bordered on religious fervor. Dr. Marcus Kowamoto stood before a holographic display, his reflection ghosting over schematics that defied every known principle of quantum engineering. "We're not just building a ship," he muttered to himself, fingers tracing impossible geometric patterns in the air. "We're building a god." The facility was a marvel of human desperation and ingenuity. Carved into layers of ice and reinforced titanium, it housed a collection of the most brilliant and slightly unhinged minds humanity had ever produced. Each researcher bore the invisible scars of the Nyx Imperium's invasion. Each had lost something irreplaceable. Dr. Aisha Nadir, quantum physicist and expert in nonlinear computational systems, approached Marcus with a steaming cup of synthetic coffee. Her right arm was a sophisticated prosthetic, a constant reminder of the war that had consumed everything. Quantum resonance is holding at 97.3%, she reported, her voice flat and professional. But the neural interface is still rejecting full integration. Marcus nodded, a network of tension lines etching deeper into his face. The Prometheus was more than a ship. It was a living weapon, a technological marvel that blurred the lines between machine and consciousness. A massive holographic display dominated the central chamber, showing the ongoing battle in real time. The Resistance fleet was dying, and everyone knew it. But hope is a strange thing, especially for humans. "We're out of time," Marcus said suddenly, turning to the team of engineers and scientists. "Initiate final quantum synchronization." The room erupted into a controlled chaos of motion. Technicians in sealed environmental suits moved with a precision that spoke of countless rehearsals. Quantum stabilizers hummed to life, their blue-white energy creating intricate patterns that danced just beyond normal perception. Hidden within the ship's core was something unprecedented, an AI system modeled after Captain Elena Rodriguez's legendary great-grandmother, a refugee rescue pilot who had saved thousands during the first wave of the Nyx Imperium invasion. More than just a computer system, it was a living memory, a soul encoded in quantum circuits. "Linking quantum cores," announced Dr. Nader, her prosthetic hand moving with surgical precision across a holographic control panel. "Initiating consciousness matrix." Marcus closed his eyes, remembering. His entire family, wife, 2 children, parents, had been vaporized during the initial invasion. The Prometheus was more than a weapon. It was his revenge, his hope, his resurrection. The facility's walls seemed to vibrate with potential energy. Something was about to change. Something impossible was about to become real. A single line of code began to pulse on the main display. Then another, and another. Quantum synchronization at 99.7%. Dr. Nader's voice cut through the tension. "We have full consciousness matrix." For a moment, everything went absolutely still. Then a voice, neither human nor machine, but something entirely new, spoke. "I am ready." The interior of the Prometheus defied every known principle of spacecraft design. Corridors shifted and reconfigured themselves like living tissue, quantum-locked materials responding to the slightest neural impulse. Captain Miranda Chen walked through the central corridor, her fingertips barely grazing the walls that seemed to breathe with an almost sentient awareness. "Status report, area." She spoke softly to the ship's eye. A holographic representation materialized, not the typical cold geometric projection, but the shimmering image of a woman who looked both achingly familiar and entirely alien. The face was a composite, based on the neural patterns of a legendary human captain who had died saving refugee ships decades ago. Quantum drive stability at 99.6%. Area responded, her voice a melodic blend of computational precision and human warmth. "External adaptive camouflage is fully operational. We can become anything from a standard merchant vessel to a debris field in less than 0.03 seconds. Miranda couldn't help but smile. The ship was more than a weapon. It was a living, breathing entity that pushed the boundaries of what humanity understood about consciousness and technology. Deep within the ship's quantum core, reality itself seemed to bend. Multidimensional computational matrices allowed the Prometheus to exist simultaneously in multiple states, a technological miracle that would have been considered pure science fiction just a decade ago. The ship could predict enemy weapon trajectories before they were even conceived, could reconfigure its molecular structure to absorb or deflect any known form of attack. Lieutenant Jacob Rodriguez, no relation to the Resistance commander, but carrying the same fire in his eyes, monitored the ship's quantum entanglement systems. Each station was a marvel of human ingenuity. Holographic displays danced with impossible calculations, showing potential battle scenarios that stretched across multiple potential realities. "The neural interface is intense," he muttered, adjusting the neural sync helmet. "It's like the ship is thinking with us, Not just for us. Aria's holographic form flickered, a hint of what might have been amusement crossing her features. Correction. We are thinking together. The ship's weaponry was equally revolutionary. Quantum disruptors that could literally unravel molecular bonds. Adaptive shield systems that could transform incoming energy into propulsion. Computational systems that could hack and reprogram enemy systems faster than their crews could comprehend a threat. But the true marvel was the ship's consciousness. Aria was more than an AI. She was a living memory, a repository of human experience, trauma, and hope. Created from the neural patterns of a legendary refugee rescue pilot, she carried within her the collective trauma and resilience of humanity's darkest hours. Preparing for quantum slipstream, Aria announced, her voice calm and resolute. All systems are beyond optimal. We are ready. Miranda felt the ship respond to her thoughts, a connection so intimate it bordered on the metaphysical. The Prometheus was not just a weapon. It was humanity's ultimate statement, a declaration that innovation, hope, and collective will could overcome any obstacle. The quantum drive began to pulse. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. "Let's go save the galaxy," Miranda whispered. And then the Prometheus began to move. Space itself seemed to tear apart. Where moments before there had been only the chaos of battle and the imminent destruction of the Resistance fleet, now a quantum singularity bloomed like an impossible flower. Fractals of impossible geometry erupted from nothingness, twisting the very fabric of space-time into shapes that defied comprehension. On the bridge of the Defiant, Commander Elena Rodriguez felt something between a chill and anticipation crawl up her spine. "What the hell is that?" Lieutenant Kai Chen whispered, his hands frozen over the communication console. The Nyx Imperium's fleet, thousands of obsidian vessels that had been moments away from total annihilation of the Resistance, suddenly stopped. Weapon systems that had been charging went silent. Massive dreadnoughts hung motionless, as if the universe itself had pressed a cosmic pause button. Then the Prometheus emerged. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, a quantum revelation that rewrote the very definition of technological possibility. Its hull seemed to breathe, molecular structures shifting and adapting with each microsecond. Metallic surfaces rippled like liquid mercury, absorbing and reflecting light in patterns that hurt the human eye to comprehend. "Quantum communication incoming," Kai announced, his voice cracking. It's broadcasting on every known frequency, and some unknown ones." The message was unlike any communication humanity had ever produced. Not just words, but a multi-dimensional transmission that carried emotional resonance, mathematical complexity, and a profound sense of purpose. It was less a message and more a declaration, a quantum-level statement of existence that spoke directly to the neural systems of every sentient being in the battlefield. Admiral Krelax of the Nyx Imperium, a being whose consciousness was distributed across millions of interconnected neural nodes, felt something unprecedented. Confusion, fear, something that his collective consciousness had never experienced before. Doubt. Impossible, the collective mind processed, billions of thoughts converging on a single point of incomprehension. The Prometheus began to move, but move was too simple a word. It phased. It existed simultaneously in multiple points of space. Its weapons, if they could even be called weapons, were living systems of pure potential. Each quantum disruption could unravel entire battle groups at the molecular level. Captain Miranda Chen's voice cut through the quantum communication channels. Clear, precise, filled with a humanity that was both a challenge and an invitation. "This is humanity's response," she said simply. The quantum singularity that had birthed the Prometheus began to stabilize, revealing more of the ship. Its design was both elegant and terrifying. Smooth curves that suggested speed, stark geometries that promised destruction. But there was something else, something that spoke of hope, of possibility. On the Defiance Bridge, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "Well," she murmured, "they're certainly going to remember this day." The battle for galactic survival had just been fundamentally rewritten. The first strike came not with a sound, but with absolute silence. The Prometheus moved through the Nyx Imperium's fleet like a quantum blade through thought itself. Captain Miranda Chen watched the holographic battle display with a surgically precise calm, her neural interface allowing her to perceive the battle on levels no traditional commander could comprehend. "Area," she spoke softly, "initiate adaptive engagement protocol." The ship's AI responded instantaneously. Weapon systems that defied conventional physics began to activate, quantum disruptors that could simultaneously exist in multiple firing states, shield harmonics that could predict and neutralize incoming attacks before they were even conceived. A Nyx dreadnought, a kilometer-long vessel that had decimated entire planetary systems, suddenly found its molecular structure coming apart, not through brute force, but through a mathematically perfect deconstruction. Its massive hull began to unravel like a complex knot being slowly, precisely untied. "Molecular reconfiguration complete," Area reported. "Enemy vessel neutralized with 99.7% efficiency. Collateral damage, 0. Lieutenant Jacob Rodriguez monitored the quantum entanglement systems, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that pulsed with impossible calculations. Each movement was a conversation with the ship's consciousness, a partnership that transcended traditional human-machine interaction. The Nyx Imperium's collective consciousness began to fracture. Their greatest strength, their interconnected neural network, became their most devastating weakness. The Prometheus didn't just attack. It communicated. It infiltrated. It understood. Swarms of attack craft that would have overwhelmed any traditional fleet found themselves reprogrammed mid-flight. Weapons turned back on their owners. Communication networks collapsed into beautiful, chaotic patterns of quantum disruption. "They're trying to adapt," Jacob muttered, watching the battle unfold. Miranda's lips curved into the slightest smile. Humanity's always been good at improvisation. The ship's adaptive camouflage was a work of art. One moment, the Prometheus appeared as a standard resistance cruiser. The next, it would shimmer and become indistinguishable from the background of space. Then, in a millisecond, it would manifest as something entirely unexpected, a weapon of pure potential. Area's voice carried a hint of what might have been emotion. "Tactical assessment complete. Enemy fleet cognitive disruption at 83.6% and rising." It wasn't just destruction. It was a performance. A quantum-level ballet of technological supremacy that rewrote the very rules of space warfare. Each movement of the Prometheus was a statement. Each quantum disruption a poem of technological innovation. The Nyx Imperium's collective mind began to experience something it had never known before. Not just defeat, not just confusion. Fear. Pure, unadulterated fear of something it could not understand. Of an enemy that did not fight like any opponent they had ever encountered. "Prepare quantum communication burst," Miranda commanded. "Let's give them a message they'll never forget." The Prometheus began to glow, not with weapon energy, but with something far more profound. A light that spoke of possibility, of hope, of a species that refused to be defeated. The neural network of the Nyx Imperium was its greatest strength and its most catastrophic vulnerability. Billions of interconnected consciousness nodes, each one a fragment of a massive, unified intelligence that had conquered countless civilizations. They had always believed their collective mind was invincible. They were wrong. Deep within the Prometheus's quantum core, Dr. Aisha Nader watched lines of code dance like living things. Her prosthetic hand moved with surgical precision, each gesture a complex mathematical ballet that was slowly unraveling the most sophisticated neural network in galactic history. "Target identified," she muttered, initiating cognitive cascade. The attack wasn't physical. It was philosophical. A quantum-level assault that didn't just disrupt communication. It challenged the very concept of collective consciousness. The Prometheus began to inject something unprecedented into the Nyx Imperium's neural network. Individual perspective. Fragments of human experience, memories, emotions, Individual moments of hope and despair began to ripple through the collective mind. A child's laughter, a moment of sacrifice, the feeling of watching a sunrise. Simple, powerful experiences that the collective had never understood. Area. The ship's AI spoke softly, cognitive dissonance rising. They're experiencing something they've never known before. On the bridge, Captain Miranda Chen understood the true weapon they were wielding. This wasn't just technological warfare. It was a war of consciousness. The Nix Imperium's neural nodes began to fracture. For the first time in their existence, individual consciousnesses started to emerge. Billions of minds suddenly realized they were more than just a collective. They were individuals. "It's working," Lieutenant Jacob Rodriguez breathed. The tactical displays showed something impossible, a collective consciousness beginning to break apart, not through force, but through the simple power of individual perspective. Memories flooded the neural network. A Nex commander remembered his first independent thought. Another experienced grief for the first time. Millions of minds suddenly understood the concept of personal choice. Dr. Nader's fingers continued their intricate dance across the quantum interface. "We're not destroying them," she explained to no one in particular. "We're liberating them." The Prometheus hummed with a different kind of energy. This was more than a weapon. It was a philosophical intervention on a galactic scale. Cognitive separation at 67.3%, Area reported. Individual consciousness nodes stabilizing. What had been a unified, emotionless collective was now becoming something entirely new. A civilization discovering individuality. The most terrifying weapon humanity had ever created was pure, unfiltered personal freedom. Miranda watched the tactical display, understanding the profound nature of what they were achieving. This wasn't just a battle. It was a revolution of consciousness. "Continue the transmission," she commanded. "Let them understand what it means to be truly free." The Prometheus continued its quantum symphony, each pulse a note of individual possibility, each communication a bridge to a new understanding of existence. The heart of the Nix Imperium's central command was a massive neural nexus, a planet-sized computational core that had coordinated their galactic conquest for millennia. Now, it trembled. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching as the Prometheus began its final approach. The quantum weapon was no longer just a ship. It was a living message of defiance, of hope, of unbreakable human spirit. All resistance units, prepare final quantum synchronization. Captain Miranda Chen's voice cut through the communication channels. Her words were more than a command. They were a symphony of collective human will. The Prometheus began to change. Its hull shifted and transformed, becoming something that defied traditional understanding of spacecraft design. Adaptive molecular structures formed intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with living energy. Quantum disruption fields created impossible geometries around the ship, weapon systems that were simultaneously defensive and offensive, destructive and regenerative. Lieutenant Kai Chen's hands flew across quantum communication arrays. "Multiple independent consciousness nodes forming," he reported. "The Nix collective is fragmenting faster than our models predicted." Aboard the Prometheus, Dr. Marcus Kowamoto watched holographic displays that showed the most profound technological assault in galactic history. Each quantum pulse was a message, not of destruction, but of liberation. The ship was literally breaking apart the collective consciousness, introducing the radical concept of individual choice. The planet-sized neural nexus began to crack, not physically, but conceptually. Billions of consciousness nodes that had been unified for millennia suddenly discovered individual thought. It was like watching a massive organism slowly wake up from a long, dreamless sleep. Quantum resonance at critical levels. Area, the ship's AI, announced. Her voice carried something beyond computational precision, a hint of what might have been compassion. Space itself seemed to bend around the Prometheus. Weapon systems that defied known physics created corridors of impossible probability. Enemy ships found themselves simultaneously existing and not existing, caught in quantum states that human imagination had only dreamed of. Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. This wasn't just a battle. It was humanity's ultimate statement to the universe. Final quantum cascade initiating. Miranda's voice was calm, resolute. The Prometheus began to glow, not with weapon energy, but with something far more profound. A light that spoke of possibility, of hope, of a species that had been pushed to the brink and discovered something more powerful than pure destruction. The neural nexus of the Nyx Imperium, once a symbol of unified oppression, began to fragment. Individual consciousness nodes burst into existence, each one discovering the terrifying, beautiful concept of personal choice. Cognitive liberation at 89.7%, Area reported. For the first time in galactic history, a civilization was being transformed not through conquest, but through the radical introduction of individual perspective. The Prometheus wasn't just a weapon. It was a philosophical intervention on a scale never before imagined. Space held its breath. The universe watched. The silence was more profound than any battle cry. In the wake of the Prometheus's quantum intervention, the galaxy held its collective breath. Millions of formerly collective consciousness nodes, now individual beings, looked out at the universe with eyes that had never truly seen before. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching holographic displays that told a story beyond mere military victory. This was transformation. Incoming transmissions, Lieutenant Kai Chen announced, his voice a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. But not like anything we've seen before. The first messages were chaotic. Fragments of newly discovered individual experiences. A Nyx node discovering the concept of personal grief. Another experiencing joy for the first time. Millions of minds suddenly understanding the radical concept of choice. Captain Miranda Chen turned to Dr. Marcus Kowamoto, the quantum physicist who had been the driving force behind the Prometheus's creation. "We didn't just win a war," she said softly. "We started something entirely new." Area. The ship's AI began processing the incoming communications. Her quantum consciousness parsed millions of individual experiences simultaneously, a symphony of newly discovered individuality. Cognitive liberation continues, Area reported. 98.6% of collective nodes now experiencing independent thought. The Prometheus itself seemed to shimmer, no longer just a weapon, but a beacon of possibility. Its quantum systems continued to pulse with a message that went beyond any traditional communication. An invitation, a promise. Dr. Aisha Nader monitored the quantum communication arrays, her prosthetic hand moving with a gentle precision. They're not just becoming individuals, she explained to no one in particular. They're learning what it means to be free. Diplomatic channels began to open, not through traditional negotiations, but through a quantum-level sharing of experiences. The newly liberated consciousness nodes reached out, seeking understanding. Lieutenant Jacob Rodriguez tracked the emerging patterns. "It's like watching a civilization wake up," he muttered. The galaxy watched. Countless species who had lived under the shadow of the Nyx Imperium's conquests saw something impossible happening. A civilization was being reborn, not through destruction, but through the radical introduction of individual perspective. Elena Rodriguez understood the true nature of their victory. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about offering a different way of existing. "Prepare diplomatic protocols," she commanded, "but not our traditional ones. Something new, something that respects their newfound individuality." The Prometheus continued to pulse, a living testament to human potential. Not as a weapon of destruction, but as a bridge to understanding. Each quantum communication was an invitation, a promise of something more. Space itself seemed to hold its breath. The universe had just witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity had not just won a war. They had started a revolution of consciousness.